Today, a major New York City restaurant group says both customers and employees need to get vaccinated or they can't dine in. Facebook setting its sights on the Metaverse or augmented reality. During its earnings call, CEO Mark Zuckerberg discusses some of the company's newest projects. And the U.S. economy growing at a slower pace than expected in the second quarter, but spending is through the roof. What does that mean for inflation? That and much more, coming up in NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. President Biden is calling on states and local governments to offer unvaccinated residents $100 to get their shots. He says the cash reward can bring results. For example, grocery chain Kroger tried it and boosted employee vaccination rates from 50% to 75%. He also says the money can come from his CCP virus relief bill. The reward is part of Biden's latest plan to boost vaccination rates across the country. He's also requiring federal workers to disclose their vaccination status to the respective agencies. And the original founder of Shake Shack says customers need to be vaccinated if they want to dine indoors at his fancier upscale restaurants in New York and D.C. He's also giving employees 45 days to get the jab. NTD's Phil Zoe has the story.
Danny Meyer is famous for creating the Shake Shack fast food chain. But now, at the restaurateur's fancier restaurants like the Gramercy Tavern and Union Square Cafe, customers who dine and drink indoors will have to be vaccinated. Not only that, the employees too. The Union Square Hospitality Group CEO was on CNN saying,
and I would say the exact same thing here. If you really want to go unvaccinated, you can dine somewhere else, and you can also go work somewhere else.
The vaccine mandate for both customers and employees at the nearly 20 restaurants is set to start in early September. Meyer says the company policy won't apply to Shake Shack, which is a publicly traded company.
But Shake Shack will make whatever appropriate decision it is going to make at the appropriate time. This is for the restaurants that we own and operate in New York City and Washington, D.C. Full-service restaurants, not fast casual.
Earlier this week, the CDC reversed a mask policy and is recommending that people wear masks indoors in virus hotspots, whether they're vaccinated or not. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
And Google employees will be working from home longer than previously expected. Yesterday, Google CEO said his target return date is now October 18th. Social media giant will also require on-campus workers to get vaccinated. The CEO says the vaccine mandate will go into effect in the U.S. within the next few weeks. Requirements for other locations will start within the next few months. Other big tech companies, too, taking measures. Facebook is requiring all U.S. employees to be vaccinated if they work at the office. Twitter says it's shutting its reopened offices in the country. And Lyft, which had already made vaccinations mandatory for returning to the office, postponed its reopening from September to February. And fresh developments regarding Facebook's business, too. During the company's earnings call, CEO Mark Zuckerberg discussed the innovative new projects the company is working on, including the evolution of the internet through the creation of the Metaverse. Why look at the internet when you can be in it? NTD's Colin Fredrickson explains.
Facebook had a strong quarter with revenue of $29 billion, a 56% increase from last year's revenue of $18 billion. During the earnings call, Mark Zuckerberg discussed Facebook video creator monetization, augmented reality glasses, improving the Oculus Quest VR headset, and so on.
Now, the areas that I've discussed today, they're each important priorities for us, but together, these efforts are also part of a much larger goal to help build the metaverse.
Zuckerberg told shareholders the metaverse is a virtual environment where you can be present with people, like being inside the internet rather than just looking at it.
And we believe that this is going to be the successor to the mobile internet. Within the metaverse, you're going to be able to hang out, play games with friends, work, create, and more. You're basically going to be able to do everything that you can on the internet today, as well as some things that don't make sense on the internet today, like dancing.
Another big news item: how much Apple's new app tracking rules are going to hurt Facebook. The new rules let users give apps permission to track and sell their data to advertisers.
We continue to expect increasing ad targeting headwinds in 2021 from regulatory and platform changes, notably the recent iOS updates. which we expect to have a more significant impact in the third quarter compared to the second quarter.
Facebook makes pretty much all its money from advertising. In this quarter, it was 98% of revenue. Facebook fought Apple's privacy changes, saying it would be devastating to millions of small businesses. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
And Comcast is riding high from the reopening of its theme parks. The media giant reporting today that quarterly revenue at its amusement parks jumped eightfold from a year ago. That rebound, along with higher ad sales, pumped up Comcast's total revenue more than 20%, beating estimates. As businesses loosened their wallets after a year of slashed marketing budgets, Comcast ad sales rose by nearly a third. Comcast, which is also the largest cable TV operator in the United States, lost fewer subscribers than expected as it pushed its digital platforms. It's been using the Olympic Games to try to boost subscribers for its Peacock streaming service. Revenue also rose at its studios business, which had earlier been hampered by theater closures and production delays. And stocks pushed broadly higher on Wall Street today. The Dow up to a record high, up 154 points, about 0.4%. S&P 500 also jumped to an all-time high today, up 19 points, about 0.4% too. The Nasdaq added about 16 points today, 0.1%. And trading app Robinhood debuted on the Nasdaq today, but its shares fell more than 10% after opening flat. That valued the company at about $28 billion. The drop marks a dismal reception to one of the most anticipated listings of the year. Robinhood's easy-to-use interface made it a hit among young investors trading from home during the pandemic. Its March quarter revenue jumped fourfold. But it also came at a cost, putting it at the center of several regulatory probes. On Tuesday, Robinhood said it had received inquiries from the U.S. watchdogs asking if employees traded shares of GameStop and AMC before it started restricting trading in those apps and other meme stocks in late January. And the billionaire founder of electric truck maker Nikola, you might remember, Trevor Milton, is facing criminal charges today. Prosecutors claim he lied to investors about the company's technology and manipulated Nikola's stock price. NTD's Colin Fredrickson has the details.
Today, we announced charges against Trevor Milton.
Trevor Milton, the founder and former chief executive of Nikola, was criminally charged on Thursday. Authorities allege he defrauded investors by lying to them about the electric truck maker.
We charge that Milton engaged in a scheme to enrich himself by making false and misleading statements to retail investors about the development of products and technology at Nikola Corporation.
According to prosecutors, Milton's false claims include that Nikola had built an electric and hydrogen-powered Badger pickup from the ground up and developed batteries in-house,
when in fact those items had been developed by outside suppliers and other automakers. Milton claimed that Nikola was producing hydrogen, when in fact it was not.
Prosecutors say Milton also claimed Nikola had early success in creating a Nikola One semi-truck, when in fact the closest it ever came to driving was when engineers rolled a prototype down a hill so it could be filmed for a commercial. Authorities also say Milton targeted the so-called Robinhood investors to use a public relations blitz to drive up Nikola's stock price, which in turn made him one of the world's 100 richest people.
And one of the tasks in life that we have as entrepreneurs is to be able to take risks that no one else thought was possible.
He made those claims on Twitter, Instagram, on podcasts, and on TV. Retail investors were listening to Milton. His statements helped convince them to buy Nikola's stock. But what they heard him say was not true.
According to prosecutors, Milton's Nikola stake was worth at least $8.5 billion soon after the announcements about the Badger pickup. The charges mark a steep downfall for Milton, who founded Phoenix-based Nikola in 2014 and was its CEO until June 2020. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
Nikola shares plunged over 15% today. Spokespeople for Milton didn't immediately comment, but according to Forbes magazine, he is still worth over $1 billion. And if you're waiting for the shortage of new cars to be over in the United States, don't hold your breath. Investment bank Goldman Sachs says the shortage won't be over for months. According to Goldman, low car inventories will likely fall even further in August, not start recovering until September. The bank thinks inventories will stay well below pre-pandemic levels through next year. Major problem, of course, is the global semiconductor shortage, one of the main supply chain constraints driven by the pandemic. Those computer chips control dozens of functions in all modern vehicles. Not having them slows production way down. And the Association of Professional Flight Attendants say that complaints have reached unprecedented levels. American Airlines crew members often don't get proper accommodation in time. Just recently, a group of flight attendants slept on cots at an airport. NTD's Evelyn Lee has more on that.
Labor unions say that American Airlines failed to provide crews with proper hotels and enough transportation during layovers. The Association of Professional Flight Attendants, or APFA, says crews have had to sleep in airports and outside of baggage claim because the company couldn't find accommodations in time. And recently, a group of flight attendants stayed on cots at Glacier Park International Airport. Travel website editor Clint Henderson says many smaller airports are not used to the amount of demand they're experiencing.
And we're seeing cancellations because of fuel shortages and other issues. Then what happens is you get all those passengers who need accommodations and the crews need accommodations.
Henderson says in those cases, regular customers will get priority. Travel restrictions are still weighing on demand on international travel. So U.S. airlines are ramping up service to smaller domestic airports, especially to outdoor destinations. The complaints mostly concern a third-party vendor that operates American's hotel and limo desk. Crews complain about excessive wait times, lack of timely transportation, no hotels upon arrival, and unsuitable hotels.
It needs to be close because you have to realize that there's a minimum rest period for both pilots and flight attendants.
Henderson says the crew needs to rest a full 8 hours before they can be certified for a flight. American Airlines said in a statement that taking care of crew members is a priority and that they're looking into the concerns raised by the APFA and the Allied Pilots Association. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
The U.S. economy grew by 6.5% in the second quarter, but that missed estimates. Falling government spending and falling exports offset massive increases in personal spending. It's clear American consumers are spending more as we proceed through the year. Personal spending accounts for about 2/3 of the U.S. economy. It increased by 11.8%, massive increase. But it's a double-edged sword. The massive spending means massive inflation. A more conservative measure of price inflation than the CPI is called the PCE. It increased a massive 6.4% in the second quarter. That means prices increases are accelerating. I got instant reaction from acclaimed author and economist Robert Janetsky.
Well, it was a very important release. It turns out that real growth came in at about 6.5% at an annual rate from the previous quarter. That's about what happened in the first quarter. And I don't think that was much of a surprise. The real surprise, one of them at least, was on the inflation front. We ended up with a very, very rapid rate of inflation. As a matter of fact, it's the most rapid increase in inflation in something like 30 or 40 years when I went back to look at it. You have to go back to the 1970s to see this sort of an inflation rate in the economy. And if you add real growth to inflation, you get the total GDP in current dollars. And when you do that and you look at it on a year-over-year basis, it's up 17%. And we have not seen a 17% increase in spending like this and for 70 years. You have to go back to 1951, the outbreak of the Korean War, when spending went up that rapidly. So you have two things that have happened here. The Federal Reserve says that money doesn't matter, so they ended up pouring more money into the economy than they have done in a number of years. And lo and behold, what happens? You end up getting the fastest rate of spending in the economy than we have seen in 70 years. Paul, this isn't rocket science. This isn't brain surgery. When the Federal Reserve pours tons of money into the economy, it comes out in the form of spending, and it comes out in the form of inflation.
So how would you describe the health of the economy, or is it really hard to judge it given all of this new money and all of this new liquidity that's in the system?
Yeah, the ironic thing is the economy is very healthy from a spending standpoint. because all that money is in. And I suspect there's going to be very little slowdown in the spending. I had expected that in the second half of the year, we might end up seeing spending slow from 11, 12% to something like 8% for a couple of quarters. I'm changing my forecast now based on the fact that the Fed doesn't even seem to be planning on telling people that they're going to do anything to even moderate the money they're pouring into the economy. It looks to me like the spending pace is going to continue in the double-digit range, at least for the next quarter or two. And that's going to further build inflationary pressures. Paul, there are two times in our history, and I discussed this in my book, Rich Nation, Poor Nation, two times when the Fed went wild like they're doing at the current time. The first time was in the 19-teens under President Wilson, when they felt money was a great way to get the economy going. All we have to do is print a lot of it. And the second time was in the 1970s, the late 1970s. We had President Carter, who said, I don't know much about economics, but I think if we print enough money, we'll be able to really get ourselves going here. And on both of those occasions, we ended up with terrible double-digit inflation. And then to bring it under control, you have to tighten monetary policy, and usually, if it's not done correctly, it will end up with a downturn in the economy, and a lot of people will be hurt. That's the path that we are on at the current time.
Robert Janetsky. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says President Biden doesn't have the legal authority to forgive student loans. She notes that student debt forgiveness can only be enforced by Congress, but other top Democrats have said otherwise.
During a daily press conference on Wednesday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi noted that President Biden has no legal authority to cancel student loans. She explained that he can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That would be an act of Congress. Her comment may trigger pushback from some Democrat lawmakers. For months, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has issued near-daily tweets insisting that Biden forgive all student loans. On Tuesday, Schumer, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley called on the president to extend a pause on student loan payments and move on forgiving debts. Schumer said that the president has existing legal authority to cancel up to $50,000 in debt. But some moderates say canceling student loan debt would be unfair to those who have already paid theirs. Senator John Tester told reporters earlier this year that I'm not inclined to support because a lot of people have worked very, very hard to pay off their debts, and this would set a bad example. While Senator Joe Manchin noted his concern about how the government would pay for that much student loan forgiveness. In March, the Department of Education canceled $1 billion in student loan debt for about 72,000 borrowers. That's after repealing a Trump-era policy.
The U.S. trade deficit in goods widened in June on the back of a rise in imports, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. It says the trade deficit rose by 3.5% in June compared to May, just 1 month. The Census Bureau said June imports rose by $3.5 billion. Exports increased by a modest $500 million. The rise in imports proved to be a drag on second quarter economic growth. And a startup focused on helping American producers find new markets for the raw materials is launching a natural gas desk. Mickey, it's a digital trading platform looking to streamline the trading and logistics process for small and medium-sized producers, allowing them to compete against the bigger players like Shell, Chevron, Exxon. It can be difficult or not economical for a smaller local natural gas producer to compete nationally or internationally without dedicated in-house resources or using a third-party agent. So Mickey can do it for them. And it says its technology and business model means it's cheaper than other agents. As the company's new head of energy, R.J. Hayes, why now is a good time for them to start?
Right, so it's an interesting environment right now because gas prices are at something like a 7-year high, which intuitively would suggest that producers should be sort of rolling in it. But in fact, for very small producers, it's a really challenging environment because as natural gas has become a much more global, and even domestically, are much more prolific production regions that almost didn't exist a decade ago. So really to be able to make sure you're hitting the best price market, you have to have a very large view of the market as a whole. And if you're only producing in 1 or 2 states, it generally won't make economic sense to have that trading expertise in-house. So that's where we come in. We really think that we can offer very competitive prices, simplify and streamline the entire process, and not have a lot of the sort of old school legacy, paperwork, filing cabinet, fax machines, or even office space, because we're a fully distributed company.
Are the producers excited when they hear your business model?
Well, so we just announced our expansion into natural gas yesterday, but in general, yes, I think we've gotten some very excited responses, and I think they're interested to see us prove it out. So part of the sort of ramping up process, and I came on about 8 months ago, and there are a lot of preliminary steps that need to take place before you can even start moving gas. And so fortunately, we've been able to actually make a lot of those early steps, so that kind of day one, once we made the announcement, hey, we're real, we are moving gas currently, and we have the ability to scale up significantly.
So how have Mickey innovated where others haven't managed to in the past?
So I think a huge part of it is we have an advantage in that we are a digitally native company. So historically, what you've had is many of the largest trading shops in the US are legacy producers, super majors, in fact. They tend to rise and fall with the price of production, and they sort of bolt on trading shops attached to them, but they have a lot of legacy data systems that are really inefficient. I think people would be surprised to really understand how much the cost of legacy data systems, old assets that are no longer valuable, whether that's office buildings or land that was intended for production that didn't end up being useful. And all that kind of finds its way down to your energy bill at the end of the day. So I think by starting off extremely lean, fully distributed, and online from day one, we really have quite a very fast on-ramp.
RJ Hayes, Mickey. And still to come this evening. Colombian pop star Shakira could stand trial for alleged tax evasion. What's the judge's argument and how much does it say she owes? And the huge ship that blocked the Suez Canal a few months ago finally reaches its destination. Where is it going next? That and much more after this short break.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
What does it mean to devote your life to the truth? Does it mean investigating communist subversion here in America? Does it mean exposing the deadly fentanyl crisis in the Midwest? Or spending late nights and covering deep government corruption? Does it mean persevering over 20 years, even after 4 masked men set one of our printing presses on fire last year? Because at a time when America's traditional values are under attack, it's the responsibility of righteous journalists to uphold truth and tradition.
Welcome back. Shakira is facing legal trouble in Spain. The Colombian pop singer might have to stand trial for alleged tax evasion of more than 14 million euros, about $17 million. The Spanish judge say there's evidence she may be liable to pay taxes from 2012 to 2014 because each year she lived more than 200 days in the country. Shakira's attorneys say her main residence is in the Bahamas, but local media report she has a house in Spain with her partner, who's an FC Barcelona soccer player, and their 2 kids. According to the Spanish tax code, anyone who resides in Spain for at least 183 days in a given year has to pay taxes. The judge has given both parties 10 business days to submit additional arguments. Shakira's reps say this is an accepted step in the process. And as drought worsens across the West, cattle ranchers are struggling to feed their herds. Some worry they'll have to start selling off cattle if they can't harvest enough hay to feed them. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
Cattle rancher Jim Stanko in Colorado fears he'll have to sell off half his herd of about 90 cows if he can't harvest enough hay to feed them.
We need good rains at the end of May, good rains in June, and usually a good rain about the first part of July, which we have not had for the last 2 years.
This year, Stanko's hay harvest is even worse than it was last year. One field produced just 10 bales, down from 30 last year, amid heat waves and historically low water levels in the Yampa River, his irrigation source. At the Loma livestock auction in western Colorado, sales are bustling, but its peak season isn't usually until the fall when most calves are ready to be sold. Fueling the action are ranchers eager to unload cattle while prices are still strong.
If you're kind of on the brink between selling or not, I mean, kind of pencil what you think that replacement cost would be, and maybe that hay isn't as expensive to keep your cows on the ground.
Culling herds can be an operational blow for cattle ranchers. It often means parting with cows with optimal genetic traits, often seen as long-term investments that pay dividends. The Stankos will know how many more cattle they'll need to sell once they're done storing hay in early September. They hope to sell just 10, but fear it could be as many as half the herd. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
The Ever Given container ship, which blocked the Suez Canal for nearly a week in March, finally arrived at the Dutch port of Rotterdam early this morning. The vessel disrupted one of the world's busiest waterways and caused a major backlog in global trade. It was grounded on March 23rd and remained impounded for more than 3 months by the Suez Canal Authority during a dispute over compensation. Now the massive boat has ended a 3-week journey to the port of Rotterdam, carrying more than 18,000 containers. Early next week, it will continue its voyage to the British container port. As the latest business updates for today, you can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, that's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.